Delivering Grace, by John Thomas Mawson, Chapter 9 of 21. There is death in the pot. How Christians affect one another, and what to do when many suffer. And one went out into the field to gather herbs, and found a wild vine, and gathered thereof wild gourds his lap full, and came and shred them into the pot of pottage, for they knew them not. So they poured out for the men to eat. And it came to pass, as they were eating of the pottage, that they cried out, and said, O thou man of God, there is death in the pot. And they could not eat thereof. 2 Kings 4 verses 39 to 40. When we go back to the beginning, we learn that the first thing in Christianity is the acknowledgement of the lordship and headship of Christ, and then, that believers, indwelt by the Holy Spirit and forming Christ's body, are necessary to each other, that they are all dependent one upon another, and that each contributes to the prosperity or harm of the whole. This truth is solemnly taught in 1 Corinthians 12 to 27. The help we render to each other is also most blessedly shown in Ephesians 4, the chapter in which the Lord's glorious supremacy over all things is declared. We read there, but speaking the truth in love, may grow up into him in all things, which is the head, even Christ, from which the whole body fitly joined together and compacted by that which every joint supplies, according to the effectual working in the measure of every part, makes increase of the body unto the edifying of itself in love. Verses 15, 16. The harm we may do to each other is illustrated in our story. They went out, these sons of the prophets, to gather herbs for the meal that Elisha had commanded. And one gathered wild gourds, his lap full, and came and shred them into the pot of pottage. His ignorance and folly almost resulted in the whole company being poisoned. There was death in the pot. It was from a wild vine that he gathered his gourds, from a plant that had not come under cultivation, fit figure of the evil flesh. Of it we read, the carnal, fleshly, mind is enmity against God, for it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be. Romans 8 verse 7. It is that which has not and will not come under God's cultivation. And it always brings forth death and corruption, for to be carnally minded is death. Romans 8 verse 6, and, he that sows to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, Galatians 6 verse 8. Now, every believer is either walking in the Spirit or in the flesh, each one is pursuing the things of the Spirit or the things of the flesh, and whether we will or not, what we are, and how we live, and what we pursue, and that of which the heart is full affects all with whom we associate. Suppose by way of illustration that envious feelings or a hard and unforgiving spirit is allowed or cultivated in the heart of any believer towards any of his brethren, or suppose one brother becomes jealous of another because he seems to have more honor than himself. These are bitter roots from which will spring hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, and strife, works of the flesh, and most deadly in their effects wherever they show themselves. How often have we seen happy Christian companies blighted and broken by bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, and evil speaking, or as a result of one or more who ought to have served all in love, lording it over the Lord's heritage. Our associations with all the saints of God is a divinely formed association, and we cannot ignore it. The spiritual prosperity of one is a help to all, and the works of the flesh in any means harm to all. We can no longer live as though we alone are affected by our living, for if one member suffer, all the members suffer with it. It was a happy thing for those sons of the prophets that Elisha was at hand, and that they had sufficient wisdom to refer the case to him. It is a most blessed and comforting thing to know that we may cry to the Lord, even when things are at their worst. He is our resource when death instead of life is in the pot. How different would things have been in the Church of God if the saints of God had had enough wisdom to do this, instead of trying themselves to put things right when they have gone wrong. How many a disaster might have been averted if instead of officious meddling there had been a lowly and broken-hearted crying to the Lord, if that which has proved beyond our skill to put right had been simply carried to him, if we had said to the Lord, as the sons of the prophets said to Elisha, O thou man of God, there is death in the pot. There has been much failure in this respect, but he fails not, and we may count upon his deep and tender interest in his own, and counting upon this we shall not be disappointed. Moreover, He has the means whereby the sorrow may be turned into joy, and spiritual health recovered to those who are sick.